Dustin.
Hi, Dad, I'm cold.
Scared the shit out of me there.
Put on a blanket, Bobby.
Come on, Bobby.
I ain't paying the heating bill.
Think warm thoughts, Bobby.
You shouldn't be cold. We got propane heater.
Have some black coffee, Bobby. All right. Hello, Dustin. This is, I have no idea what month or week it is when we're dropping this episode, but this is a soup to nuts episode.
Yay.
Yeah. All right. Before we get started, we're going to talk about Heretic in a minute, but I need to tell you, a dream I had first that you may find amusing or not. I don't know.
Okay.
If you guys are listening to this, it was amusing enough not to cut. So I had a dream, and let me preface this by saying these are noits. These are notes.
Noid.
It was about the Noid.
It was about the Noid. Domino's Pizza.
I couldn't avoid him. I speech to text dictated this dream into my phone. So I wouldn't forget beats. And so I had to go back and edit it based on what it thinks I said and run on sentences. So
sure,
I did my best. I had a dream where I became aware of a meme where a bunch of Verizon customers were sent a text of this blow up balloon figure of Elon Musk sucking on the ear of a tiny effigy of St. Ignatius. And I bought the figures and wanted to see them in action. And so it's like I'm trying to picture what that was in the dream.
My brain won't even compute that image.
And so
I have to AI it.
Yeah. So I called 4 coworkers who were leaving the office, which is where we were, except we were at my parents' house, and to come in and take a look so I could amuse everybody with the tale. And then I came in and started making jokes. There were more people in the front of the house than there were before, and they started applauding, and I realized that someone else must have been speaking that I've been interrupting and calling attention to my stupid, hey, look at this stupid effigy thing. And that someone else was Steve Martin. And then he kind of laughed, and I was like, what's going on? And they were like, this was kind of a celebration for him. And I followed him back to the front of the house, and I called up to him and I said, Steve, I'm so sorry. Did I just fuck that up? And he looked at me and said, kinda. And I was like, oh, fuck me. And then I woke up.
Even in your wildest dreams, you're making great impressions on celebrities.
I interrupted some, like, whatever it was, retirement speech, something important, something to honor Steve Martin. And I came in, and in the other room was like, guys, look at this. It's Elon Musk sucking on his ear. Look at this. Isn't this crazy? And I start doing, like, impromptu stand up, and then I hear applause, and I'm like, oh shit, there's other people here. I'm such an asshole. And then Steve Martin walks in. I'm like, oh.
I just like, most people would have a dream about Steve Martin where they're like, play me a song on the banjo, Steve. Or they're like, wow, we're best friends now. And he's like, cool, I paid off your house. And you're just like, no. Oh, I ruined your party.
I crashed his party. I ruined a tribute to him that someone else was giving.
Sorry, I ruined your Black Panther party.
And then when I confronted him and tried to apologize, I was expecting him to say, oh, it's fine. I go to a million of these. But he was like, yeah, you kind of ruined it. It mattered to him.
You're the worst. I was looking forward to this all week.
And that put me into such like panic and distress that my subconscious was like, oh, wake him up. Anyway, yeah, it was horrible.
And then Martin Short and Selena Gomez showed up and tried to solve your murder because you were murdered by Steve Martin.
Yeah. Yep. All right. Speaking of murder, I guess. I don't know. We'll see. Let's talk about Heretic.
Hi, good afternoon, ma'am. Are you interested in learning about our Savior, Jesus Christ? Hi. Good afternoon. Hi, are you? My name is Sister Barnes, and oh my gosh. Are you interested in learning more about the Church of Jesus Christ?
Come on in.
We can't come inside unless another woman is present.
My wife is home. Does that count?
Great.
You like pie?
Yeah.
My wife has pie in the oven.
I could tell that you are a very spiritually curious person.
I think it is good to be religious, to find your faith in a doctrine you actually believe.
Well, our work here is done.
Now, I will go and check on the pie.
So sleep, silent angel.
Can you fit through this? You're crazy. We just need to go home.
I won't keep you if you wish to leave. But I want you to choose which door to go through based on your faith.
What does this have to do with us leaving?
Everything.
I think that we're being studied.
It will make your hearts beat faster. It may even make you want to die. Do not be afraid. You will witness a miracle.
Okay, so I watched this last night because you told me you had seen it, and I had not watched anything for the show.
Oh, okay.
And so I was freaking out. And so I knew from the trailer that I liked Heretic as a premise and that I'd heard good things about it. And it was just one of those that I was going to get around to at some point. And I did. So this is written and directed. We love writer-directors on this show by Scott Beck and Brian Woods, who are the two gents who co-wrote A Quiet Place. And so this is their movie, and it stars Hugh Grant, Sophie Thatcher, and Chloe East. And it's a film in which two missionaries, two Mormons, are, biking around town, proselytizing, and they come to the house of Hugh Grant, who has expressed interest in hearing more. And then they can't get out of his house, and then things happen. And that's the movie. Dustin,
yes,
what did you think of Heretic?
So ultimately, I gave this 4 stars. I enjoyed it. I thought it was well made. I enjoyed the shot design. I enjoyed the production design. I liked Hugh Grant a lot in this role, which is big praise because I generally don't care for Hugh Grant, or at least not modern Hugh Grant. But then again, like the big thing in my mind is him playing an Oompa Loompa, and I'm like, get out of here.
No, he's an Oompa Loompa.
An Oompa Loompa. Sophie Thatcher is great. Chloe East is great. Like, they do a really good job selling these characters, but also, just all of the emotional distress they are put in here. I think they play that well. I enjoyed the writing. I mean, I think ultimately it's a strange movie because the first, act and a half is just talking, is just conversations. And it's basically like one conversation just, in pieces. But it's about one thing for a long time. And you would think that you would just start to zone out and get bored. But I found myself really engaged. Now, part of that is like, I had never seen a trailer. So all I knew this was A24 and it was Hugh Grant and people said it was okay. That's all I knew. So I hadn't seen a trailer, but I knew enough to know that Hugh Grant plays an unsettling guy who, has 2 girls in his house. And so for me, like, it worked in my favor that I didn't know anything, but that I knew enough that I knew to fear him, and that things were off. But I think the film does a really good job early at making you feel like, yes, things are off with him. But at the same time, kind of in a weird way, selling the girls' belief in him, like their faith that he means well. But the plot, unveils itself in due time. And I think it all like works logically. I have a couple questions about the actual like mechanisms that happen here and there if you backtrack the film, but in terms of like why the girls would go into the home and why they would, you know, spend time with him even though he's putting off these creepy vibes pretty instantly is because like he's charming and, you know, whatever. And so like I understand it all. I get it. It makes enough sense that I buy into all of it. And the conversations are interesting. It's interesting to hear all of their point of views. Now, I do think that Hugh Grant's point of view swallows their point of view a little bit. But I think it's by design. It's supposed to put them in this like in this mindset of feeling, you know, jumped, so to speak. Like we're being completely dogpiled on here, and I think that is the point, and that having their counterpoints isn't really the point. And so anyway, but it is interesting because Hugh Grant gives a lot of really big like monologue-y type soliloquies about what he feels, and I think that that's really a hard thing to do in a movie like this, but he does it well because he could come off really grating if he's not actually charming or he's not actually interesting, and everybody really is. So I enjoyed it. I had a great time with it. I do think that they're like, I'd almost want to watch the last half again just to make sure that it all checks out soundly in terms of all the mechanisms behind it, but and what the plans are. But from where I sit, it's fine. So I'm just going to give it the benefit of the doubt and believe that it did a good job at covering its own tracks, even though in my mind, trying to play it like work it backwards. Like, well, if he was going to do this, then he knew this and he had to work that out before so that this would happen. That may not all work out, but it works out enough to buy into it. And so, yeah, that's where you are.
Okay. I really enjoyed it. I forgot to write notes for this because I watched it last night and I just slipped my mind.
You're good.
But I really enjoyed it. I always like a movie that is giving me unexpected beats. So sure. I know the structure of the movie. I know that it's okay. It's a trapped in a house movie and, whatever. And then what makes that interesting is, the antagonist, like what exactly they want. And you're not even sure really what he does want for most of the movie. So that's part of it is like, what does he want with us? And, the strange nature of of how his house keeps them ensnared, like those weird little locks and stuff. It's just something tactile and very interesting about that. And like, I think obviously a big pull of it is like, this is clearly an extremely intelligent person who whatever he does want, it's not as basic as like, oh, I want to kill, or I want, he wants to prove a point, but he also knows how to persuade and debate in a way. And I found that very interesting for a movie, especially in this genre, to essentially keep an audience's attention for the first half purely on the merits of the debates between these characters, with the plot of a tense horror film, like driving driving the why this is even happening, instead of you're just sitting there watching like My Dinner with Andre and you're like, okay, this is just a dinner and they're just talking. When does it end? And for this, it's like, at least with the structure and the genre it's within, you care about where this goes and it matters. And the writing is so good. I read that the two lead actresses are both they're both ex-Mormons. Oddly enough. Okay. Yeah. I keep saying I enjoyed it. I really did. I thought Hugh Grant was excellent. Probably the best I've ever seen him. As an agnostic, I very much was engaged by the entire discussion about the different religions and the analogies with the board games he makes and whatever. And in their replies and the sort of the three-dimensionality that these two girls are portrayed with as the film goes on, and the intellectual curiosity and insight that they display as well. And they're not just like, oh, well, have you heard about Jesus Christ? You know, like it's very interesting. And it reminded me of when I was taught apologetics when I was in high school for Catholicism, like the sort of the points in a way that you can defend your faith with, but they had this extra layer of like intellectual honesty about it. Like, for instance, talking about polygamy, they were like, probably more of a necessity of the time than an actual like doctrine that can be defended wholesale, you know, just stuff like that is just really interesting to me. So intellectually, I'm just keyed in on the movie. I think it's such an interesting premise and such an interesting subject to center a horror film around, you know?
Yeah. Well, we always talk about horror as analogy or, you know, horror meaning something.
Yeah.
And so like this checks that box. Like to me, what's interesting about it is yes, the conversation and yes, you know, everybody's point, counterpoint, whatever it is. But what's interesting to me is this, the metaphor of following your beliefs where they logically land. And so for Mr. Reed, he follows his beliefs all the way to an extreme. And for Sister Barnes and Sister Paxton, they also follow their beliefs. And, you know, it's essentially like, hey, challenge these beliefs you hold. And don't be afraid of where they lead you, but walk with bravery down into the hole wherever that is going to go. Right. And so we've all had those moments where you're met with like a crossroads of faith and it's, hey, okay, here's something that's really challenging about what I believe or my worldview. Now let me poke that hole in it and see if the hole is valid or not. Like, let me follow this rabbit down the hole of, you know, questions and see where I come out on the other side. And so like that happens metaphorically and physically here. And that's, I think, an interesting way to approach the idea. Like you could almost say like none of this really happened and all it is in the mind of these girls, you know, as they reach these, you know, points of deconstruction. Should I follow this trail into the unknown and see what happens on the other side? I like where it ends. I like that there's an ending that I think is logically consistent with the characters. Yeah, man, I enjoyed it. Now, I think I don't know anything about the writers, the directors, and you know what their religious beliefs are or whatever, but I didn't get any sort of overwhelming persuasion here, where like, you know, this is where we're coming down on it, and you can either get with us or, you know, hate this movie. We don't care. I didn't get that sense, which is nice. You know, I watched a review. It wasn't a review. It was because after the film, I watched the trailer for the film because I was like, let me see how they marketed this. And so, but one of the related like shorts or whatever, YouTube shorts, was a reviewer, and the dude, I don't know who he is. He was upset at the ending, and I was just like, this type of like. This type of ending, I mean, I guess it's not spoiler-ish to say like the ending can be interpreted a couple different ways. And he hated that idea and thought that it should have been more concrete. Okay. And I understand the thought process, but I'm also like, but a movie like this, if it had come down on something concrete, kind of betrays its own theme, which is you kind of can't know.
Yeah, right.
And so I like that, the message, the thematic message was followed through logically with the characters' stories. And I think it's just a really smart movie overall. Am I likely to revisit it? Maybe once. I'd like to see again how the plot unfolds and how true that is. But I don't know. I mean, I think it's a really great movie. But I don't know if I'd rewatch it. Maybe. I think I'd have to see it with somebody. Like, I don't think I could just watch it solo again. I think I got everything out of it that I needed to. I just want to be clear on the plot. But anyway, all that to say, it is a really good movie. Again, not perfect, but I really enjoyed it.
This says that the writing of the film started when Woods' father died from esophageal cancer, and a lot of questions come up about what happens after death. So that's it. Yeah, it really came from a place of curiosity about that more than like you said, putting a point of view out there that is represented as the one by the film.
Right. Oh, can we talk about how thankless Topher Grace's role is in this movie?
Well, we shouldn't say much until we get into spoilers, but
okay.
Yeah, I'll just say before we get into spoilers, I would watch it again by myself. Okay. Just because I enjoyed it that much, and maybe to scrutinize the plot machinations. But and then I would show it to other people and be like, "What do you think?" You know? I would watch this movie again, and obviously I've always told people that's my litmus test. Do I care to revisit this film?
Do I want to watch?
Having invested the time, would I invest that same time again? And the answer is yes. So.
It's not a long movie, and it did fly by.
Yeah, it did. The thing, I watched it on Max, and I have the one with the ads, and this is one of the fucking things I hate about streaming is like the ads pop up, and in the beginning they didn't do this. They just ran a bunch of ads at the beginning of a film, and now everyone does what Tubi does, which is they run commercials in the middle of the film. And
do they really?
And it's like, yes, they don't run in the middle of a conversation, but you want to suck all the tension out of a film.
Yeah.
Interrupt it with a fucking Verizon commercial. And
right.
That sucked. Still, the quality of the film surpassed that horrible machination in place that can make watching movies just not worth it. It's just them being like, oh yeah, just pay us more, and you don't have to watch commercials. It's like, I'm already paying you. Yeah. Like, I understand if this was free, like if this was just a free, like Max was free with ads, and it's like, I get it. You're going to interrupt my movies. I'm getting a movie for free. But I'm paying you $10 a month to watch movies, and you have to put ads in front of that. Right. Again, run them at the front. I understand. Whatever.
The ads must be how they're making money.
But you got 4 ad breaks in the middle of a 100-minute film.
Yeah. That's
every
crazy.
25 minutes. Hey, everybody, it's Progressive Insurance.
Yeah. You're in good hands.
Fuck you. All right, let's get into spoilers.
Yeah.
So some people had a problem with the idea that Paxton suddenly is brave.
Sure.
Supposedly suddenly.
Yeah.
That's the most consistent one I've found. But a lot of people I saw like on Reddit and stuff were sort of impressed by the nuanced and accurate characterization of what it's like to be a woman in the LDS church. And, speaking to your point about, horror and the characters' intelligence and agency. And it's like, other than the fact that they're locked in, they can't leave. The idea that they're like, their mission is to convert this person. And so they're driven by that. And a lot of women in aggressive, I'll say, religious, denominations are somewhat, at least these people said about Mormons, somewhat taught to ignore their instincts about this sort of thing in favor of, but we're here to do a job. Like,
yeah, sure.
you know, you're focused on the task and, you know,
yeah.
I'll broaden that. I don't want to single out religion. Like employers in general can be like,
sure,
do the job. And there's a general, I feel like an acceptance in film when I'm watching people do stuff. And I'm like, some people would cross the threshold. I wouldn't go into that house, but
sure,
you know, I think it makes more sense because there's two of them versus just one missionary
sure,
going out there. But anyway,
well, yeah, but I bought it because A, Hugh Grant is charming, and B, it does take a minute before the creepiness of things start to set in, and by then they're already locked in.
They're locked in.
So even if they had, you know, like, oh, this doesn't feel right, they couldn't have gone anywhere still. Yeah, man, I think they did a good job in terms of, like they said, I think it was Sister Paxton who's like, you know, or maybe it was Sister Barnes, we can't come in unless your wife is here.
Mm-hmm.
So like they stated what their intentions were, what they wanted.
Yeah.
Now, should they have gone in without seeing her? No. But I understand the idea of like, oh, well, I mean, who's crazy enough to lie that they have a wife in the next room?
Exactly. That was my thing. I was like, yeah, I mean, all he had to do was lie to them. Like people underestimate the power of like, oh, I seem like a nice person who wouldn't lie to you. And then they're like, hey, you lied to us. And he's like, yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Well, I want you to escape.
And I don't care about it. Right, yeah.
I lied to you.
That's going to be the least traumatizing thing I've done to you all night.
I have women locked up downstairs and I have an oddly elaborate basement. Strange locks.
I'll lie to you, cut that one woman's finger off, you know. Yeah. Yeah, but I buy Sister Paxton's turn into bravery because of a few reasons. One, fight or flight kicks in, right? And so she's going to fight.
Yeah.
Two, after the death of Sister Barnes, I do think that unlocked like a little bit of like, I don't care what, like maybe I'm going to die, but I'm going to fight kind of, you know.
Like what already was serious, but when your only ally is killed, it's sort of like, okay, so we are crossing over into this man is killing us. Like there's a possibility I'm not getting out of here at all.
And you also have to think too, by that point, she had already started to piece together what was happening.
Yeah.
So she had the bravery of, I know that you're full of crap.
Yeah.
And so I think it was two things. It was her realizing that the prophet's body was in a different position.
Yes.
And that was kind of like nail in the coffin for this is a magic trick. Mm-hmm. And it was the death of her friend who, okay, now with both of these things, I know that he's crap and I know that she's gone. So I've got to do something different here. And yeah.
Some people were like, how would she know what a birth control implant looks like as a member of the LDS church? How would she know that? And it's like, okay, one, it's 2025. Like she, you know, I'm sure she knows about it. Two, the whole first scene of the film.
Yeah, I was going to say
is her talking about how she's
at
least curious or not living in a bubble. Like this girl admits to watching pornography and, you know, as far as we know, as far as from her telling of it, for intellectual purpose, this is all academic, Tom, isn't it? Oh.
Yeah.
Can you imagine someone catching slughorn? Professor, what is that? Oh, it's just for research purposes, of course.
It's all academic.
Anyway, yeah, so we know for a fact, it's like people forget, like always in horror movies, a scene like that isn't directly related to the plot. Yeah. It's important to pay attention to.
It's revealing character. Yeah. It's revealing, you know, and that's what so much of these early scenes, what they do really well is they reveal character. Yes, there's a little bit of conflict in that, you know, Mr. Reed doesn't believe what they believe.
Yeah.
But there's also conflict or not, the point of those scenes is to reveal the characters.
Yeah.
And yeah.
These are three-dimensional people who, yes, they're members of churches, and yes, they are devout members of the churches, but they're not stupid. They're not, it's not a cult. Like they're so I really loved the misdirection, because obviously you're meant to think that Sister Barnes is going to be the final girl, because she's the more overtly traumatized. Like, she has the whole backstory about her dad. Yeah. She is more disturbed sooner than Paxton is. Yeah. She's the braver one. She's the one who's like seemingly challenging him and outsmarting him. And so that the whole time I'm thinking like, okay, when is he going to kill Sister Paxton? When is she going to make a fatal mistake? Like, when she starts to go through the other door, I was like, oh, that one's going to lead to a death room or something. And that's it.
Yeah. Right.
And it didn't. And so when they finally kill Barnes, I was very surprised. And because then I was just like, there's no way Sister Paxton can survive this. So when she turns, I was like, oh my God, it was just really compelling. And a little bit of like Sherlock-esque, no, I noticed when you did this, and it shows how it would have happened kind of thing. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. And it kind of became this, I don't know if I buy the, she came up from the thing in the floor, and it's like, that's a lot of noise. You guys,
it's a lot of noise.
Come on.
Yeah.
But that stuff aside, it's like, it's less silly than, oh, she just came back to life, Yeah. Because the whole point is, he's full of crap. Like this, there was no resurrection. He just has the only thing I don't understand is the women in the basement. He made it sound like they wanted to be there. And I was having a hard time understanding that.
Yeah, he was saying like, why do you let me? Like, why do they let me or whatever? Yeah. Like, I do it because they let me. And it's like, I don't understand how he broke them enough for that to be the case. The thing that stuck out to me as how does this make sense is that in order for that switcheroo to happen with the prophet, the girls had to leave the room, which meant they had to be at the top of the stairs. And the reason they were at the top of the stairs was because Topher Grace knocked on the door. But how could he have planned when that would happen or if that would happen? Right. So is it a happy mistake? Like, oh, I need them up here. Here's the chance. Okay, now go ahead and move. Like that's such a difficult thing. So that's one of the big plot points where I'm like, I need to verify that I'm reading that right. Yeah. That the reason that was able to happen was because Topher Grace was there. Well, but there's no way for him to have known that.
Well, but maybe he was counting on it because he knew that they'd be searching for them. So maybe he was just willing to wait until whenever that moment was to do that.
I think yes, but I also think that is a little bit stretching credulity because that he would have had to have alerted the second prophet that now's your opportunity. I don't know how he would have communicated with her to do it then. Yeah. And I also don't know how he could have, like, you could hope that they're going to look for her, but I don't know that it tracks that they would be looking for her that night during a blizzard.
Yeah.
Like that seems like maybe that wouldn't happen.
I think that's more plausible than, okay, when the doorbell rings and I go, they're going to rush to the door and out of the basement.
Yeah.
And so that's your moment, and you'll have enough time to quietly move a dead body and throw it down a shaft and then put it back and plant your face in this pie. Yeah. And they won't hear it or anything. Right. That felt like a little bit of a cheat because this is headcanon. He could have at least been like, all right, if in the case that no one comes to get them, I can rig my doorbell to ring itself and pretend like someone's here.
Sure.
If it's too late at night, I'm getting kind of tired and I want to wrap this up.
Yeah. Right.
But like, So for maybe he's just like, maybe he expected it would happen. I don't know. That again,
Sure.
that's my headcanon, but
Sure.
but yeah.
I think the other thing is like it relies on her having the knowledge that when the second prophet says it's not real, that means what it really means and not what it seems to mean.
Yeah.
But I'm like, if she was going to go off book and he knew she went off book and then had to counter that with the whole, whatever the everything's fake kind of thought, where she was like, you're improvising now because she went off book.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay,
The
so
whole
he didn't want her to
simulation
go
thing.
off book. Yeah, he didn't want her to go off book, but she did. Why would she have stayed on book until then and not just been like, hey guys, this whole thing's crap, right? Like, why stay on book until that very last part
decide.
and make that really cryptic? As if was she hoping to get away with it, like that he wouldn't notice? Immediately he noticed because she went back up the steps and they had a conversation. Like you see him saying something to her before she disappears into that side door.
Oh,
and so,
okay, yeah.
And so he's clearly like saying to her,
hey,
like, you went
what
off,
the hell?
You went off book, bro. And now I've got to come up with something. Simulation.
Well,
right?
good thing he noticed the birth control implant and happened to think of that. That's. I mean, it seems like a clever setup and payoff, but really retroactively, it's more of a crowbarred thing in there. Like, and he digs an implant out of her arm and convinces her that it's a chip. It's a microchip or whatever.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. I also don't buy Barnes waking up, like coming back to life long enough to murder him with another set up weapon that otherwise wouldn't be used and then collapsing dead. Right.
Did she?
Yeah.
So it's already set up that in your moments before you die, the near-death experience, your brain does a lot of crazy things, hallucinates a lot of crazy things. So the question is, when Paxton is laying there dying, when does she start to hallucinate? Now we know by the end of it, she's seeing a butterfly that isn't there. Is that the first hallucination, or did she hallucinate Sister Barnes' resurrection? Anything could be true. So you could almost, if you have a problem with that and say like, yeah, I don't know if I buy that, you could always say, but that could have been a hallucination. The last thing we saw was Sister Paxton laying there dying, bleeding out, and had a box cutter to her throat. Yeah. It's very possible that in that last moment, she hallucinated the whole rest of the film,
which is so depressing because that means she's just dead down there.
She's just dead. Presumably he is too, but we don't know.
Yeah.
So they could theoretically make a sequel to this where he's still alive and, they reveal like, oh yeah, Paxton is dead down there.
Oh boy.
Still whatever. But all that to say, I don't know. This is where that one critic was like, it should have been more concrete. It was the screen. He was basically saying like, it's the screenwriter's job to take a stance. And he's like, and I hate the idea of like, we're just looking to start a conversation. And I'm like, I also don't love the idea of we're looking to start a conversation with a film.
Sure.
I like for there to be some sort of point of view. But I think with a film like this, the point of view is nothing can be known for certain.
Yes.
That is the point of view.
Yeah.
And the ambiguity in the ending feeds the theme, like it supports the theme. So it's not an ambiguous ending for nothing. Yeah. It's an ambiguous ending that supports your theme. That tracks. So I enjoyed the ending. I thought the ending worked. I don't know how I feel about like, the whole like the women in the cages kind of a thing and all of that. Like I guess the idea is that he's carried his belief of like all religion is control to its logical conclusion, which is now I'm going to do the same thing. Yeah. And if that's the case, then everything is relative. There's no morality in the world, and I'm carrying all of it to its logical conclusion, which is it doesn't matter what I do, doesn't matter who I hurt, doesn't matter anything, because there's no ultimate judgment for anything, and like it's the logical conclusion of that headspace, the extreme logical conclusion of that headspace,
which makes it seem like his whole motivation isn't even to convince them. It is to flaunt his
control them.
It will control them, but the satisfaction of the control is before I kill them and or enslave them down here.
Yeah,
I get to win an argument against them, and you know, by virtue of they're either dead or they're my slave by the end of this, and therefore I am right. And because it's like, it's not about sending them on their way. And it's like, yeah, stop being a Mormon. It's like, it's just, I want to win an argument. And then I need to make sure those people don't tell the police the extreme ways in which I choose to prove my point.
Right. And the flip side of that is I like the logical conclusion of Paxton's character. Mm-hmm. So Paxton was the one who immediately was like, let's just go through the disbelief door. It's fine. Mm-hmm. Like we'll toss it all aside just to make him happy. Yeah. And then realizes the error in that is that she would be lying to placate somebody else, like somebody else's thing, rather than standing up for the thing she believes in.
Right.
And so the logical conclusion is I'm going to stand up for the thing I believe in to the end.
Yeah.
And I think that that's like, it could have gone another way. It could have gone where, you know, he wins the argument and she gives up and we get the depressing ending where she becomes the broken woman in the cage. Mm-hmm. It could have also been where she wins the argument and he realizes the error of his ways. Mm-hmm. But either way, it relies on the idea that ultimate truth
is unknowable.
Right. So all that said, the only real logical ending for her is to stay her truth to the end. And I think that makes total sense.
Yeah.
So I love the fact that the storylines are consistent with the characters, and there's no like hackneyed redemption or hackneyed like fall from faith, fall from grace.
Yeah.
For her, it just makes sense that both of the characters are carried to an extreme but logical conclusion. And now I guess you could say, if anything, it does kind of make atheism feel sinister.
Yeah.
Which is why I was like, I'm curious what these guys actually believe, who wrote it, because, you know, I don't think that's what they're intending here. But I do think it's interesting to put up a mirror to, you know, if this is your belief and if you were so inclined to go extreme with it, this might be what you become.
A handsome murderer,
a charming, very smart psychopath. Yeah. And so like whatever, but yeah, I don't know, man. I did enjoy it. And like, the more I talk about it, the more I enjoy it. And I do think that it's interesting. It's just interesting filmmaking. Like, it's clear that the writers wanted to say something to me, and yeah.
Well, and so I'll put a point of view out there that might offend some of our listeners. Maybe I don't know. If you're an atheist, I suppose. I personally believe that atheism is arrogant. And I think that that's fair to say. If you're going to criticize, it's easier for me to criticize atheism than it is to criticize any other religious belief. And because atheism is based around the idea that you are certain that there is nothing. And I think that is arrogant to make that kind of reach and criticize others for making the similar reach that there is something. So that's why I can't connect to atheism, because it's the certainty that is a little absurd to me. Like, you know, it's easier to say, oh, it's unknowable if there's a God than to say, oh yeah, there's definitely no God, dude. What are you, stupid?
Sure.
So it could be that if they were picking a villain, an intellectual villain for this film, we felt comfortable with atheism because it's the only belief system that is opposite of all the other belief systems. There is nothing. It's all control. And, blah, blah, blah. You can believe that it's all control and you can still believe that there's a God. You know what I mean? It's not, it doesn't have to be. So in that sense, I think that it would be murder and kidnapping aside, it's fair to criticize that perspective for what it is without explicitly having a character say atheism's dumb, bro.
Yeah, right. Sure.
That's just me reading into what possibly makes one comfortable with, kind of like saying like, oh yeah, it's easy to make a villain who's like, who creates child soldiers. Like, oh, we all agree that's bad. Like, we don't all agree that atheism is bad, but if we're going to have a discussion about religion and we got to pick one, it's like, well, atheism's the outlier,
Yeah.
Even simulation theory is somewhat faith-based, all that to say, if it takes a point, I would say that, but because it's the only belief system that won't recognize some form of unknowable. Because to me, if you're like, oh, it's unknowable, it's like, well, then are you an atheist? Like, are you not an agnostic? Or are you just very strongly? I don't know. Anyway, it's
interesting, and like I don't know if if it's beneficial to go into theological ramifications of this, but like the idea of, okay, so if you're an atheist, like if the film is saying anything about atheism, whatever, but it's certainly saying something about the atheism that is built upon the idea of systemic control being the motivating factor for religion. And that argument to me has always been felt incredibly false and forced, because I'm like, okay, maybe there's an argument to be made that Catholicism, there is a singular person that might benefit from the control, but in almost every other sect of Christianity, there is no singular person who would benefit from the control. Like I've been in multiple churches, I've known many, many pastors, and not a one of them would have cared for control or has any idea of like, or has any control. Like what would they be controlling somebody to do? And what would be in it for them other than, I guess, the gratification of knowing that somebody's listening to you? But that doesn't feel like that's just a random dude who wants somebody to listen to him. That's not a systemic thing that would be so widespread so fast that would account for the springing forth of a brand new religion that would then dominate the world map. But I feel like there's I don't know, man. There's just a weird, like, but who? Like you think about, okay, well, even in Judaism, but who would benefit from control? That doesn't. I don't know what that means.
I think the idea of control makes more sense in the very, very early days of each religion where there's just less people.
Sure.
Like where, like, I'm talking like sun god type of stuff, not even like organized religion, but just like, and some of that is just, early humans being less learned in what the stars are, and creating stories. And then some of it is like, hey, if we all agree on this thing, we can sort of say the sun god wants us to do this, and that it's easier than persuading people with, I think we should go over here because there's more food, the sun god told me. Okay. And, and so I think it applies more to that. I think in the modern context, other than, you're right, like a centralized figure like the Pope or something directly benefiting, I think this is where this is where the argument falls apart. like, okay, fine. After early humans, okay, then, we've got all these different sects that are splitting off and, denominations growing. I don't know how the idea of control remains there necessarily. I will say on the back end, like present day, the benefit of control of people is probably voting. It's probably more like that. Now, I won't say that, like, obviously religions didn't start to, no matter what you believe, religions didn't start to get votes. It's just one of those byproducts of, we have a lot of like people who will vote this way if we just tell them we believe the same things that they do, no matter if we do or not. A lot of evangelicals voted for Trump, even though he is the living antithesis of their values. Mm-hmm. And all because he just says he prays and, has the Bible and has a favorite Bible passage and stuff. And it's,
and I would agree with that, but I think that, that's a singular person, mm-hmm. not the system itself. In order for the religion to mm-hmm. be created and to then propagate based on control. Like, I don't think Trump is creating more Christians.
Maybe it would be more fair to say that religious denominations are inherently vulnerable to control rather than created to be controlled.
Sure.
That would be fair to say, because then it's, well, whoever benefits is the charlatan who's kind of driving the tides, not the religious organization themselves, who are vulnerable just because they are intellectually less, I hope this doesn't come off as offensive, less, not I want to say less critically thinking, less curious and more focused on here's what I believe and here's how I can kind of deepen that versus what else is going on? Why shouldn't I believe this? I think that maybe that just makes any belief system where there's faith, and it's not just religions, it's faith in institutions, it's faith in industries, arts, like all that kind of stuff. Like, people who are used to relying on a bigger thing than themselves are probably more vulnerable to someone coming in and saying, I agree with that, and, come vote for me, than smaller groups of people or people who are not centralized, such as atheists, probably.
And that probably is because when it comes to religion, it's such a deeply personal thing that religious people are always looking for other religious people to not only like cause that inner validation of what you believe, but also just looking for the community in that. And it's so important to someone that, like, it almost becomes the only thing that matters. And so when you meet somebody who goes, I also believe that thing, then you're just like, well, it doesn't matter anything else. We're now best friends. And so, I think that may be true. But yeah, man, I don't know. It's an interesting thing. I just always go back to obviously Christianity is the thing I know the most in terms of, historically. And it just seems to me that in order for Christianity to have begun, if it were in any way about controlling somebody, there would have to be someone who benefits from it. And in the early days of Christianity, that could have been that the people were benefiting, because the more people followed Jesus, the fewer people followed the Roman Empire.
Right.
And we could quickly overturn the Roman Empire with more people. But then you have to stop and think, so the general populace is the ones benefiting from the control, because we're all like snowballing this effect into like overthrowing Rome.
Yeah.
Sure. But then you also have to think, like, in order for that to take place, in order for that to happen, they decided to write down the things that they believe in these books, and they were written within the lifetime of the witnesses that would have witnessed them, and could therefore either corroborate or destroy and dismantle that argument. And Rome would have looked before anything else at how can we dismantle this thing, and clearly would have wanted that dismantled, and so they evidently couldn't dismantle it. And so then they started to subjugate those people, and the early founders of it, the disciples, who all willingly went to death for something that they would have known they just created out of nothing for, yes, a good reason, which is overthrowing Rome.
Right.
But would all of them have gone to a painful death for that reason? And so that's when that whole argument starts to unravel into like, what is the more believable option?
Yeah.
Is the more believable option that some people got together, wanted to overthrow Rome, decided to fake these stories, and specifically mention people, places, and times in those stories that could easily be dismantled if any of those were fake.
Followed up
and
on.
Then, and then basically giving Rome the keys to dismantle it, hoping that they won't do it and that they won't put them to death. But when they do put them to death, they go to death willingly. It seems like that's a lesser argument, and it seems to me that it's based on a lot of grasping at straws. But that's neither here nor there. The point is, the idea of it being about control rings false to me. So if the idea was we're going to throw atheists into this negative light in this film, maybe, but they're specifically are throwing under the bus the people who believe that religion is about control. And that I'm okay with.
Right.
Because I don't think that's a valid argument.
Well, and all to say, like, a movie can't and shouldn't please everybody. Like,
no,
you know, I've been personally offended by a ton of movies because it's like, because that's like, oh, what the fuck? Like, that's my thing. Like, what? Right. Even if it's like a joke, you know, like at the expense of something that I, feel aligned with. Yeah. But to have a whole film be like, hey, you're stupid.
You're an idiot.
This is how you look to us and everyone else.
And again, the whole point of the film is like, it's almost like agnosticism, the movie. The whole point is we don't know for sure. Right. And so and so to that end, we're not looking to vilify any specific viewpoint.
Sure. But realistically,
in and of itself,
the most arrogant point of view in this discussion would be atheism. So the bad guy's an atheist. Sorry,
Yeah, sure. Right. Yeah.
It's there's only one school of thought. There's only one belief system where I can, because there's people on Reddit who are like, I was really hoping that he was just like a crazy Satanist, but it's like, but the way he was talking was. Because then the film would be like, the film and like the characters would be acknowledging like, well, there is a Satan, and and that would be just kind of reductive, because it's like, oh, we've already got long legs and we've already got thing like, Satanism's out, baby. And
I did think they were going to go that route when she started
walking through the thing.
Yeah, she's walking through the doors and whatnot, and I was like, whoop, what are we about to see?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
she opens the door and Nicolas Cage is there slamming his head into the table.
That would have been so funny. Yeah, I don't know, but I think it's interesting, something you said earlier about how you could argue that the entire film is an allegory. It didn't actually happen. It's just the externalization of the search for truth. You know, at one point, Paxton even says that. He's like, yeah, but why would you want to go down there? And she's like, because I want to know the truth. Like the whole movie is about the search for truth. And he's claiming that, oh, I know the truth. The truth is control. And she's like, I don't believe that. And, you know, here's how I know that you're contriving all this. Like, it's not just about resisting control. It's like, you know, here's the things that I believe. And even though you're putting me to the test, it's not consistent with my life experience or what I've come to know to be true.
Yeah. And it's interesting because it is, he says at one point, like, the things I'm about to tell you are going to make you sick.
Yeah,
they may make you want to die. Like these kind of things. Right. And so, you could almost frame it like what's actually happening here is they're still in that living room and he's poked a hole in their faith. But instead of running away from it, she's going into the hole. Yeah. And she's like, well, look, I'm not afraid of these arguments you're bringing up to me, which, like, coming from the Christian circles, like, a lot of people are afraid. Like, they're afraid to enter dialogue with non-Christians because they're afraid that something's going to get brought up that they don't know how to answer. They haven't been trained to answer. Right. So either they don't ever train themselves, they don't ever question those things. Yeah. And ponder them themselves, or that's all they do. And they end up like unraveling because they're, well, to use a biblical phrase, they're tossed about by every wind of doctrine. It's as somebody comes up and says, hey, here's what I think. Oh, I think that too. Yeah. Here's what I think. Oh, me too. And like they'll go every which way. And instead, what I liked is she's going head first into the doubt that he's now, put in her. And let me go straight into it. I'll see what's out there. And she stays the course.
But not to be so open-minded that your brain falls out.
Oh, yeah. I've heard that. Yeah,
which is funny. I think it would be interesting to, upon rewatches of the film, to plot out and think about what interpretation of the movie that one wants to follow. Like, if you think the whole entire thing's an allegory, then it's just, you accept it on its merits because anything that seems a little plot wise ridiculous is explained away by, yes, but none of this is actually happening, so don't worry about it. Or you could go into the whole, okay, it's all actually happening until she's been stabbed and she's dying and the rest is a hallucination. Like, to go through that and just to follow, like, okay, so what if it's this? And then you try to think about whether or not the film supports each interpretation. That's one of the things I like about it so much, is I just think it can be rewatched multiple times to explore with the mindset of, okay, on this watch, I'm going to focus only on Sister Barnes and see if I can pick up on anything there. Because at some point you have to it's easier to accept the allegory point of view because then you can just accept all the elements of the film. It's harder to go, okay, at what point are real things not real? Because we're talking about the noise of moving the body. It's like, they would absolutely hear that, or the machinations of when they move to the door and how does he communicate with her and all this other stuff. Like, it's easier to be like, oh, it's just allegory. It's like, okay, that's fine. Sure. But then if you are to be like, oh, but everything's real until she's stabbed, it's like, well, are they both partially deaf? Like this, or they're just scared. They're not looking. Like, what is it? But it's a little too thin. Not impossible, but a little too thin. I would feel like in that situation, you'd be hyper vigilant and you'd hear every fucking noise anywhere. And absolutely, those women slaves were probably malnourished. I don't think they could move a body without making a shitload of noise. So especially when you're flopping it down not only did they,
that's what I was going to say,
you're flopping it down a shaft, like a water-based shaft, a spoon. Yeah. And not only did she drop it down there, it was like a couple of steps in too. It wasn't at the base of the ladder.
She dragged it. Yeah. She dropped it in and pushed
did they work
something.
In teams? Was there another one down there whose only job was to drag it away? And then she's like, fuck this. And I'm back to the cages. I did my part.
It's the stagehand slave. She's got a clear comm headset on and she's in all black.
You know what? I'm going on break.
I'm union.
All right.
I worked my 4. I need my hot lunch.
I can't wait to get back to my water bowl.
Yeah, right.
So excited. I think I got this tasty water today. New tasty water.
New tasty water.
So good. All right. All right, well, that's Heretic, right?
That's Heretic.
Okay. All right, everybody. Enjoy whatever you're doing next after this. Dragon Ball Z is next.
On the next episode of Dragon Ball Z, will the women escape the cages?
Will the stagehand finally quit? Find out next time on Dragon Ball Z.
I'd love to see the anime version of this, the Dragon Ball version of this. It's just
when she gets her throat slit, like the background goes.
Yeah, they're in that faux sanctuary. Yeah, the anime noises. They're in that faux sanctuary, and Mr. Reed's like, just powering up his argument.
Yeah. And he points a lot like, I don't have to listen to you. You listen to me. Have you ever played Monopoly?
That's how the prophet got in and out, is instant transmission.
Just put her hands on her head.
Yeah.
Instant transmission.
I'm surprised I pulled that term out of my brain.
I'm impressed, Dustin. That's not something.
I know Dragon Ball Z. What's that cat's name? Chulu. It's something. I never can get
it. The
it.
cat is Korin.
Korin.
Yeah. The cat up on the lookout who has the sensu beans and the staff.
I don't know. It's just a cat. I don't know.
What's that cat's name? I think he's the only cat on the show.
Okay.
Maybe.
I don't know what he does. He's just a cat.
Wait a minute. There's also Poir. Is Poir?
Oh, that sounds familiar. Poir.
Oh, wait a minute. Yeah. What was I saying before? Korin. Okay. Yeah, there are two
Kuzu?
cats.
Yeah. Okay.
Kuzu. Pazuzu.
Cuzco.
I'm Cuzco. Yeah. All right. Okay. We should go.
Yes.